morning we are in Joshua chapter 18. Joshua chapter 18. Let's pray together. Our God and our Father, we're so thankful for this, another first day of the week. We're thankful for the blessings already in this day. Thank you for the measure of health that we enjoy. And thank you for this time that we have to be here together for the purpose of studying your word. Help us as we look at the things that happened long ago to be reminded regarding your character and how you dealt with people then and how that you changed not. In Jesus' name, amen. We summarize the book of Joshua with three words: entering, conquering, occupying. Well, we've seen the entering and then we've seen the conquering, and so now we're into the occupying portion. We've already seen some of the land occupied, but as we begin chapter 18, it says the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled themselves together at Shiloh. You might make a note of that word, Shiloh. You might go back. You might go back and look at the blessings that Israel pronounced upon the 12 sons down in the land of Goshen. And look at what he specifically says to Judah. I'll leave it at that. It might have something to do with Shiloh and a capital S. Here, though, the children of Israel assembled themselves together at Shiloh, and they set up the tent of meeting there. What is that tent of meeting? That's the tabernacle. So now we just kind of like maybe envision that structure. Do you remember the articles of furniture on the inside? We might find 7. We come into the tabernacle. The first thing that we're going to come to, brazen altar. Second piece we're going to come to, laver for cleaning. Then we're going to enter into what's called the holy place. When we enter into the holy place, if we look to our left, we're going to see some kind of light. The lampstand. If we look straight ahead, well, first of all, we look straight ahead, we may see something that sort of separates where I'm at from something else. What am I seeing there? The veil. When I look in front of the veil, I'm going to see in front of the veil, I'm still in the holy place. I haven't gone into the Holy of Holies yet. Something from incense, straight ahead. And then I look over to the right, I'm going to see the table of showbread. And how many loaves of bread are going to be on that on a weekly basis? How many tribes were there? There you go. So then when we go, if we could, if we're the high priest and now we can go through the veil, how often? Once a year. Once I come in there, now what am I going to see, Brother George? I'm going to see the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to see a mercy seat. I'm going to see. So there's those articles of furniture. So when you're reading through that, it just says all of a sudden they set up the tent of meeting in Shiloh. Well, that's it. That's that tabernacle. And it's going to stay there. The significance of that is it's going to remain here throughout most of our study of Judges. Now, something's going to happen to it in the book of Judges, but we'll save that for the book of Judges. Okay, so now we're seeing this. They're in Shiloh. They set up the tent of meeting there, and the land was subdued before them. And there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not yet divided their inheritance. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, How long are you slack to go in and to possess the land which Jehovah the God of your fathers hath given you? Appoint for you 3 men of each tribe, and I will send them, and they shall arise and walk through the land and describe it according to their inheritance, and they shall come unto me. They shall divide into the 7 portions. Judah shall abide in his border on the south, and the house of Joseph shall abide in their border on the north. And you shall describe the land into 7 portions and bring the description hither to me. I will cast lots. We looked at that idea yet last week. in regards to the casting of lots, that was not just something left up to chance. Who was the power behind the lot? How it fell? That's right. We read that from the book of Proverbs. That's right. I will cast lots for you before Jehovah our God. For the Levites, we're reminded again, have no portion among you. We'll see what they get today. So the men arose in verse 8. They went. And Joshua charged them. Joshua 18 and verse 8. Go into the land and describe it. Go walk through the land. Come again to me, and I will cast lots for you here before Jehovah in Shiloh. And the men went and passed through the land, described it by the cities into 7 portions in a book, and they came to Joshua, to the camp of Shiloh, and Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before Jehovah, and there Joshua divided the land unto the children of Israel according to their divisions. So you then have, verse 11, the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin. You have some of the cities down in verse 21. Maybe the most significant of those cities might be found in verse 28. What city would that be? Starts with a J. Jerusalem. But what was the other name associated with Jerusalem? It became known eventually as Jerusalem. But what had it been known as? Yeah, you had the Jebusites that had been there. And keep in mind, well, at some point in time, that's going to be important. If we think ahead to the time of David, there'll be a time when an angel of Jehovah has a sword stretched out against the city of Jerusalem to destroy it based upon something that's happened. I'm not going to give you all the clues. And David goes and he finds a particular man, and that particular man happens to be a Jebusite. He's still left over from the people that were living there. But we'll have to just save that for we get to 1 Kings, 2 Kings, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you have that. Chapter 19, you have the children of Simeon, verse 1. The lot for the children of Zebulun, verse 10. The lot for the children of Issachar, verse 17. Asher, verse 24. Naphtali, verse 32. Dan, verse 40. So when you finish all that, we get to verse 49. So they made an end of the distribution of the land for inheritance by the borders thereof, and the children of Israel gave an inheritance to Joshua the son of Nun in the midst of them, according to the commandment of Jehovah. They gave him the city which he asked, even Timnath-Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim, and he built the city and dwelt therein. What do you find outstanding in regard to the inheritance as it pertained to Joshua? What might seem fair? Now, what's Joshua's position ever since Moses died? What? He's been the leader. He's been the guy in charge, right? He's been the one that has helped them come into the land and conquer. And remember, we kind of talked about last week, that just wasn't a couple of weeks. This has taken a while. A lot of battles have been fought. In regards to importance, how important is Joshua? Pretty important. So when it comes to the divvying up of the land, our cities, who seemingly ought to be at the top? Who might even think ought to be at the top? You don't see that. So it is a great lesson for us in regard to humility and being content with whatever God gives us. Yes, sir?
I was just thinking about the distribution and their casting lots. Some will say that's gambling, but I contend that it's not gambling because God had control of those lots. Maybe I'm wrong.
Far from gambling, we read from Proverbs 16 and 33, the lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of God. So you think about the choosing of the apostle to replace Judas. 2 names were put forth when that lot was cast. It was not a 50-50, flip the coin, heads you're it, tails you're it. The apostle chosen was who God wanted to be chosen to replace Judas. the lands, as they were divided up by lot, end up being exactly the portion of land that was going to be needed to support those people and also to support whatever their trade was. Did they need to be near water? Did they need to be more pasture land? Did they need to be on the coast? All that eventually became apparent that, wow, that's really kind of like where they belonged. Well, yeah. Who was behind the lot? God was. So very good. Thank you for reminding me about that and for bringing that up. Verse 51. So Joshua gets his city. At this point, we'll talk about it again. He's about 85. He's going to die at 110, so he's going to live in peace the last 25 years of his life. He gets a city. We'll talk about him more later. I'm not sure we can get to 23 and 24 today, but these are the inheritances which Eleazar, who's his father, Aaron. Eleazar is now high priest because Aaron died. Aaron died the same year Moses died. Prior to Moses, they died both in the 40th year of the wandering. Remember? Neither one of them got to enter into the land. And so did their sister, we might add. So we have Eleazar, his son, the priest, and Joshua, the son of Nun, the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the children of Israel, distributed for inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Jehovah at the door of the tent of meeting, the tabernacle. So they made an end of dividing of the land. Any comments on chapter 18 and 19? How'd you do with all them cities and names? Pretty tough, huh? You ought to hear me say them. Chapter 20, Jehovah spake unto Joshua, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, Assign the cities of refuge, whereof I spake unto you by Moses. It's already been talked about once, but now it has to be considered again, because now it's actually time to do it. And we see the purposes of these cities of refuge. They are for the manslayer, verse 3, that killeth anybody. What's the word? Accidentally. There's no premeditation here. Unawares. This is a city that they can flee to. Not only them, but if you look down in verse 9, it's for the children of Israel and for the strangers. God even making provision for the strangers who sojourn among them. Verse 4, he flees to one of these cities. He shall stand at the entrance of the gate of the city, declare his cause in the ears of the elders of the city. They take him into the city. Obviously, if he has a cause, he's not guilty. It was accident. They give him a place and he can dwell among them. If the avenger of blood pursue after him, they are not to deliver him over. The only reason they would deliver him back over is that they would come to the conclusion based upon the knowledge given to them that guess what? He's guilty. He's guilty. It is murder. It's not by accident. It's not what we would call my involuntary manslaughter. So if the avenger of blood pursue after him, they shall not deliver up the manslayer into his hand, because he smote his neighbor accidentally and hated him not before time. He shall dwell in that city until he stand before the congregation for judgment, until the death of the high priest that shall be in those days. We might look at that at some point in time. It's a very interesting parallel in regard to the refuge found in the cities of refuge and those found in Jesus. Some interesting parallels that we might be able to draw from. Won't do it this morning. Then shall the manslayer return. So once the high priest has died, he can return, come to his own city, to his own house, unto the city from which he fled. So how many cities of refuge do we have? One in each what? Anybody have a number? 6. 6 is your number. And you have those cities listed beginning in verse 7 and 8. And notice now we go down to verse 1 of chapter 21. Let's just kind of keep this together. Then came the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites. Again, we can kind of go back to some of the previous chapters. Remember, they had no portion. They had no portion of land. They weren't given an inheritance. They'll have some land. We'll look at it in a moment. Then came near the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites unto Eleazar the priest, and unto Joshua the son of Nun, to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the children of Israel. And they spoke unto them at Shiloh, in the land of Canaan, saying, Jehovah commanded by Moses to give us cities to dwell in, with suburbs thereof for our cattle. And the children of Israel gave unto the Levites out of their inheritance, according to the commandment of Jehovah, these cities with their suburbs. And you can begin in verse 4 if you would like. You could do it later if you haven't done it already, and you can just read all those cities. But we'll just skip down to verse 41, because then it tells us that all the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the children of Israel were how many? 48. 48, including what cities? We just talked about it. The cities of refuge. Go back to Deuteronomy 35. Remember we spoke about, again, when we read through there, these cities of refuge, whereof I spake unto you by Moses. Well, Moses is still speaking about these cities of refuge back in Numbers 35. And note verse 6. And the cities which you shall give to the Levites, they shall be 6 cities of refuge, which you shall give for the manslayer to flee to. And besides them you shall give them, what's the number? 42. 42 cities, 6 cities of refuge, total number of cities given to the Levites, 48. And land. The cities that they're given, you can go back and read in Numbers, they're giving a certain amount of land beyond the walls of the city. They're to measure that out, and that's the area for which their cattle and their various animals can roam. So you have the Levites getting their inheritance. We get down to verse 43. So Jehovah gave unto Israel all the land which he sware to give unto their fathers. Now we're just kind of remembering this promise that had been made far long ago. And now, although it's taken a whole, seemingly in our years, we would think, man, that's taken a long time for that to take place. God hadn't forgotten anything in regards to what he was going to do. His timeline and our timelines aren't the same. Sometimes we wish they were. We wish things could happen a little bit faster in regards to certain things, but that's not the way it is. And they possessed the land, and they dwelt therein. And Jehovah gave them rest. Make a note of that. They now have rest round about according to all that he sware unto their fathers. And there stood not a man of all their enemies before them. Jehovah delivered all their enemies into their hand. There fell not aught of any good thing which Jehovah had spoken to the house of Israel. All came to pass. Any comments on chapter 21? Yes, sir.
That period of peace didn't last too long.
It doesn't last too long, but again, for the sake of some people, let's just take Joshua and Caleb, for example. Boy, what a time of life that would have been. On the way over this morning, again, I'm thinking about Joshua. Thinking about an age at which he dies, 110. Thinking about him being 85-ish when he gets his city, which means now if we come back a few more years in regards to how long it took to conquer the land, we'll note that in a moment. Then we come back 40 years because he had to wander with Caleb and everybody else in the wilderness till all these other people died. Now I'm going to come back 40 more years and I'm back in Egypt, and he's almost about the same age as Caleb, basically either a baby or going to be born almost about the same time that Moses is taken off. So I'm Joshua, and I'm born in the land of Egypt, which means the first 40 years of my life, once I'm old enough, what am I subject to? Slavery. I had to live through that. And then I'm in the wilderness wandering for 40 years. Wasn't my fault. I came back and gave a favorable report. Remember, he never said, the Bible doesn't record any negative words from Joshua. Never. Just, this is what it is. This is what I got to do. This is the consequence. We're going to wander. But it's okay because God's promised me I'm going to get to go in. And now, at 85 years of age, I get my city. And for 25 years, I got peace.
That's a pretty eventful lifetime.
Pretty eventful lifetime. You think about all the things that happened, things that he saw, the events that unfolded, no doubt. Anything else in regards to that? When I first got to 22, I thought, well, we'll just buzz right through that. But we're not going to buzz right through it. I find it just an outstanding chapter, and there's one lesson in here that really we got to get. Then Joshua called the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. Now remember, as they came into the land of Canaan, they came into the plains of Moab. We're on the east side of the Jordan, and this is where we are for a while. We had some battles we had to fight over here. Once we fought those battles and we've conquered, then we're going to cross the Jordan. But these tribes, the Gadites and the Reubenites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they say what? We like this area. We got a lot of cattle, and this is going to work good for us. And Moses said, okay, it's fine. But here's the deal. You're crossing over, and for however long it's needed to conquer the land, you're staying and you're going to help. They said, hey, got a deal. Left their wives, left their kids, left their animals there. And the men of war crossed over. Well, guess what? The land now has rest. The service of the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh is no longer needed. You have kept, verse 2, all that Moses, the servant of Jehovah, commanded you. You have hearkened unto my voice in all that I commanded you. You have not left your brethren these many days unto this day, but you have kept the charge of the commandment of Jehovah your God. And now Jehovah your God hath given rest unto your brethren, as he spake unto them. Therefore now turn ye and get you into your tents unto the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of Jehovah, gave you beyond the Jordan only. Now note the wisdom of Joshua. Notice again as we begin to think about him and the occasions that he is going to be given now before he dies. Think about what's most important to him to tell people. Begin to think about that. We talked about last week, growing older. What can I do? Maybe my abilities aren't what they used to be. Well, I can still probably have conversations with people. I'm having these conversations with people as I'm growing closer and closer to dying. What am I talking to them about? What do they hear coming from me? What's most important to me that I want to convey to them before I depart? You got to consider it. Here's an example. Take diligent heed to do the commandments and the law which Moses, the servant of Jehovah, commanded you. We do not know if he ever sees any of these people ever again. That's a pretty good distance. They live on the other side of the Jordan. But before he sees them all for the last time, there's something I need to remind you of. You take diligent to take heed to do the commandment and the law which Moses, the servant of Jehovah, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, and to cleave unto him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Did he not have a history to speak from? Could he not speak based upon his experiences that we just noted a while ago? Could he not speak from the heart here? What had he seen? He had seen blessings when people followed the Lord, and boy, had he seen what happens when you don't. And so he wants to pass that on. He wants to remind them, this is the most important thing I can tell you before you leave. Not be a good farmer, take care of your animals, do this. No. That's all secondary to this. Yes, sir.
Interesting, as you pointed that out. I was reminded of Paul's words in Acts 20 to the Ephesian elders, just 2 verses, 31 and 32. Therefore be alert, remembering that for 3 years I did not cease night or day to admonish everyone with tears. And now I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you the inheritance of all those who are sanctified. It seems appropriate that as leaders, preachers, last messages, last sermons, that type of thing, remember the word of the Lord.
Yeah. So he just re-emphasizing based upon a New Testament example that in Acts chapter 20, when Paul had called for the elders, sent to Ephesus in verse 17, and had them come, and you have this great sharing of inspired words and truths, again, based upon the fact that He's never going to see these people again. And he knows already, based upon inspiration, what's going to happen. He knows about the grievous wolves that will enter in among you. They will come from your own selves. But again, he's getting one last opportunity to give a charge. That's the part I'm trying to get us to think in regards to what are we sharing with the last opportunities that we have. There's so many things to talk about. There's a lot of things I like talking about. I can get just as excited as anybody else about talking about the potential that we're going to be good in football again. I can get excited about that. And it has its place. But if that is all I'm ever talking about, well, I'm not following these examples. Because these examples show me I need to be talking about spiritual matters. I need to be reminding my kids and my grandkids, or maybe my brethren, if I have the opportunity, about the things that are lasting. The things that you got to hold on to, the things that mean something. These other things, they don't mean something. They're not important. And you know that's what it's all about. And thank you for pointing that out, because again, as you go down further in verse 36, when he had thus spoken, he kneeled down and prayed with them all. And they all wept sore and fell on Paul's neck and kissed him, sorrow most of all for the word which he had spoken, that they should behold his face no more. You talk about taking advantage of an opportunity. That's it. And we all know, we don't know when that last opportunity may be. So a part of our prayer to God would be to have the courage, to have the wisdom, the ability to take advantage of those opportunities and share the truth, the gospel, what people need to hear. So Joshua blessed them in verse 6, sent them away, and they went under their tents. Any comments on that? Thank you for that. Verse 7, now to the one half tribe of Manasseh, remember you got one on the west, one on the east. Moses gave inheritance in Bashan, and of the other half gave Joshua among the brethren beyond the Jordan westward. Moreover, when Joshua sent them away into their tents, he blessed them and says, okay, you return with much wealth. Of course, they've got this much wealth because of all the conquering that they've done. You return with much wealth into your tents, and with much cattle, silver, gold, brass, iron, raiment. When you go back, you divide that. You divide that with all the people there. And the children of Reuben, children of Gad, half tribe of Manasseh, returned and departed from the children of Israel out of Shiloh. Now, we read through that, and I'm telling you, if we're just buzzing through it, because I got to get through it, because that's part of the chapter that was assigned to me, what we don't stop to do and think as, it's been 7 years. Remember, from Caleb, we already had 5. Caleb said, I was 80, and now I'm 85. So we already know the conquering of the land has took at least 5 years, but a couple more added to that. These people have been in their presence for 7 years, and now they're leaving. So you're going to have a sadness, heaviness apart on the people that are staying and the people that are leaving. But they're headed back. In verse 10, when they came into the region round about the Jordan, that is in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, half tribe of Manasseh, they built there an altar by the Jordan, a great altar to look upon. The children of Israel heard, say, behold, the children of Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar in the forefront of the land of Canaan, in the region about the Jordan, on the side that pertaineth to the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered themselves together into Shiloh. And what is their determination? Going to go to war. But, here's the lesson we need to get as we begin verse 13. The children of Israel sent unto the children of Reuben, Gad, half tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead, that's east of the Jordan, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar. So Phinehas is in what relationship to Aaron? He's his grandson. We've already heard this name come up back in the Numbers, but that's the relationship. Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and with him 10 princes, one prince of a father's house for each of the tribes of Israel. So they came in verse 14 to Reuben and Gad and Manasseh, these people, and they said, thus saith the whole congregation of Jehovah. We are here as representative. What trespass is this, that you have committed against the God of Israel, to turn away this day from following Jehovah, in that you build an altar to rebel this day against Jehovah. Is the iniquity of Peor? Somebody want to help remind me what that all involved? Who was involved in that? Where did that happen? Well, if you make a note, you could go back to Numbers chapter 25, and it was those first 9 verses in Numbers chapter 25, where Israel abode in Sodom and played, and the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. And we'll even learn that Balaam had something to do with that. And there is a plague. You remember the result. Phinehas is the one who stays the plague. But before he can stay the plague, how many people lose their life in verse 9? 24,000. These people now are remembering those events. They're saying, is the iniquity of Peor too little for us? From which, note, we have not cleansed ourselves unto this day, although there came a plague upon the congregation of Jehovah. What are you seeing here in these people's lives as a result of a sin that was committed, well, now years ago? Consequences. There's still a memory of this, and not only a memory, it seems to suggest that some people maybe secretly are still doing it. Why would he say, we have not cleansed ourselves until this day, even though there was this plague? It's still a part of their history. It's not like, oh, you know what, yeah, that happened, no big deal. No, it's still a big deal. It's still with us. In fact, based upon what y'all have done, we've been reminded about that. Have you forgotten about that? That you would turn away, verse 18, this day from following Jehovah? And it will be, seeing you rebel today against Jehovah. That's what they're thinking. They think they're rebelling. Tomorrow he will be wroth with the whole congregation of Israel. They're concerned not only about who they think is rebelling, they're concerned about themselves, because they have seen God's judgment carried out upon Israel as a whole. People punished. Howbeit, verse 19, if the land, now this is not outstanding. They've already settled their land. It's all the land west of the river. They've divvied it up. Everybody's got their land. If the land, again, if the land in your possession be unclean, verse 19, if where you're living on the other side of the river, if it's unclean, okay, no big deal. Pass over and come live with us. Kind of selfless. In order to make room for those 3 tribes, what are you going to have to give up over here? Going to have to give up some land. Well, if that's what it takes, we don't want to suffer. We don't want to suffer from God, his punishment. Pass over. Pass over the land of the possession of Jehovah, wherein is Jehovah's tabernacle in Shiloh. Take possession among us, but rebel not against Jehovah, nor rebel against us, in building you an altar besides the altar of Jehovah our God. Look, it's not just what happened about Peor. What about now? Verse 20, did not Achan the son of Zerah commit a trespass in the devoted thing, and wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel, and that man perished not alone in his iniquity? You see something else that they were being reminded of based upon what's happening? So there it is. We see this, we heard about it. We see this contingency of Phinehas and these other 10 who come. This is the accusation based upon, this is what we're observing. And then the answer comes from Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in verse 21, and the heads of the thousands of Israel. The mighty one God, Jehovah, the mighty one God, Jehovah, he knoweth. I think there's a lesson there. We wouldn't have to go any further. You could simply highlight mighty one, you could highlight God, you could highlight Jehovah, and then you could highlight he knoweth. And Israel, he shall know. You're going to know as soon as we tell you. If it be in rebellion, or if in trespass against Jehovah, save thou not us this day, that we have built an altar to turn away from following Jehovah, or if to offer thereon burnt offerings and meal offerings, or to offer sacrifices, peace offerings thereon, let Jehovah himself require it. But, and, if we have not rather out of carefulness done this, if we have not rather out of purpose done this, saying, in time to come, your children, the children east of the Jordan, might speak unto our children west of the Jordan and say, what have you done? What have you to do with Jehovah, the God of Israel? For Jehovah hath made the Jordan a border between us and you, ye children of Reuben, children of Gad, obviously half tribe of Manasseh. You have no portion in Jehovah. So might your children make our children cease from fearing Jehovah. You see their reasoning? You see their carefulness, the purpose behind why they built the altar? I know, again, how it was perceived. I'm asking you to see what they were thinking. Therefore we said, verse 26, let us now prepare an altar, not for burnt offering, not for sacrifice. It shall be a witness between us and you, between our generation after us, that we may do the service of Jehovah before him with our burnt offerings and with our sacrifices and with our peace offerings, that your children may not say to our children in time to come, you have no portion in Jehovah. Therefore we said, it shall be that when they so say to us or to our generations in time to come, that we shall say, behold the pattern of the altar of Jehovah, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, not for sacrifice. It is for the purpose of a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against Jehovah and turn away this day from following Jehovah, to build an altar for burnt offering, meal offering, sacrifice, besides the altar of Jehovah our God that is before his tabernacle. And when Phinehas the priest and the princes of the congregation, even the heads of the thousands of Israels that were with him, heard the words of the children of Reuben, Gad, and the children of Manasseh, it pleased them. And Phinehas will say in verse 31, this day we know that Jehovah is not, this day we know that Jehovah is in the midst of us, because you have not committed this trespass against Jehovah. Outstanding. When they built this altar, unbeknownst to the children of Israel living on the east of the Jordan, the purpose, the carefulness behind it, that it would be a witness. Because in time they're afraid of what? Because of the river that's going to separate us. Those children on that side, the next generation on that side, they're going to say to us on this side, you're not of us. You're not us, of us. You don't have anything to do with Jehovah. That's their reasoning. In regard to that reasoning, was there anything faulty with that? As best we can tell, not at all. The Bible doesn't say anything about that. They're not condemned for it. If there was something wrong with it, by the time they come, even after they have some words, there might have been a war. But when we look at the children of Israel living on the west side of the Jordan, when they heard about the altar, what did they think? Innocence or guilt? It has to be guilt, because what do they prepare for? War. Yes, sir.
Okay. These guys were thinking, and they were very astute, because even in the way in which it's worded here, you can see the seed of what they were worried about. In verse 13, you know, they built this altar in the region about the Jordan on the side that belongs to the people of Israel. Already it seems like, and when they say, you know, come over to us, you know, come, let's see, if the land, verse 19, if the land of your possession sends me, pass over into the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle stands. It's almost like, you know, even in their reasoning, it's like, oh, there's this thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that Israel did get divided, but not east and west, but it was actually north and south.
Exactly. So again, from all intents and purposes, as you read it, you see two different mindsets. You see the purpose, the carefulness, and the reason for doing it. Why they thought it's important we do that. And it wasn't for, we're not going to use it in an ungod. God forbid that we do something like that. That wasn't a part of their mindset. So they're thinking that way, and yet this other group of people is not thinking they're thinking that way. They're perceiving something totally different. And initially, there is a preparation for war. This might require action. What I have just heard about, what has been brought to our attention, might require action. So we need to be mindful of that. But before we take that action and end up doing something that we might regret, let's send some people and find out from them why they did it. Now, do you see the application amongst us? I may do something, and I might be in the same boat of the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. That my thinking may be a certain way, something has happened, but you might perceive that in a totally different way. And it could be, if I am actually in the wrong, if I am actually in sin in some way, it's going to require action. But before you come and take that action, you need to come and find out what's going on. Now, is that not a lesson? Because if we don't do that and we just come and act, and let's just say they would have acted and just came and gone to war, how's that work out? Not well. How's that work out in real life when we jump to a conclusion, jump right in, and start trying to do whatever we think needs to be done before we've actually found out what's really going on here? Listen, the thing is, if something needs to be done by an eldership, if something needs to be done, once they find out something needs to be done, then they will do it. But before it needs to be done, first thing they're going to do is find out what's going on here. What have we heard? And then the explanation. You see that? Yes, Brother Jim.
I think worse is you have the situation instead of inadvertently taking action that shouldn't be, start gossiping.
Yeah. Even more so, without even taking action, just start talking about it. They got somebody they could trust. He got some other people they trust. He said, hey, let's go find out what's going on. And so in the end, obviously, the statement that he makes, this day we know that Jehovah is in the midst of us. Verse 32, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, and the princes that came with him, guess what? They go back home. And what was the result of that? The thing pleased the children of Israel. You think about all the time they've been gone, what are they anticipating likely they're going to have to do as soon as they get back? They're going to go to war. And you imagine when that report comes back, after it has been dealt with, it's been listened to, okay, I see what you are reasoning, okay, you're not in the wrong. The thing pleased the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed God. Boy, did they ever. Thank God, we don't have to go to war. They were rebelling. They just needed something as a witness. I can kind of see what they were thinking. You got that river, and they're thinking our children and our generations are going to do this, they're going to be at odds with each other, and that's not what it was about. That's what it was about. It wasn't about the other. How great was that? Blessed be God. They spake no more of going up against them in war to destroy the land of the Reubenites and Gadites. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad called the altar witness. For they said, it is a witness between us that Jehovah is God. So now you know why we just couldn't just buzz through chapter 22, because that is just, to me, an outstanding lesson for us in dealing in any situation in life, but especially with each other. Comments? Last chance. Okay, I do really believe we can get through 23 and 24 next week, because Joshua's going to die next week. He doesn't know that yet, but he's going to die. He's going to die next week, not this week. He dies next week. 23 and 24, and then we'll finish up Joshua. Thank you.